There are rivers that do not flow to the sea. They flow into the memory of a nation. Bach Dang is not just where the Vietnamese won. It is where the Vietnamese defined who they are. Here, there are no towering walls, no futuristic weapons, only wood, stone, water, and an intellect that listens to nature to its very core. This video does not retell history in the familiar way. No chasing feats, no highlighting glory. We will dive into the structure of a victory, into the place where science touches the sacred, where data meets faith, where humans are small, but never bow their heads. If you are only looking for the answer to who won, who lost, you can stop here. But if you want to understand why a small nation could survive through 1,000 years of fire and storms, stay, because Bach Dang is not just a river. It is a genetic code. Just a river apart, yet it feels like stepping from a forensic scene into a temple of history. Episode 6. We leave Quang Yen, leave the black mud, leave the stakes lying silent beneath the earth, where history must bow down, just to be touched. The car stops before the Tran Triple Gate. Massive stone, great bronze. The space opens up like a declaration. Marcus stands silent for a few seconds and whispers, "This is not preservation. This is tribute on an eternal scale." If in Yenjiang, history lies deep, hidden, requiring knowledge to understand, then at Bach Dang Jiang, history stands upright. 3 victories, 3 dynasties, 3 names erected in stone and bronze, forcing anyone who enters to diminish themselves. We often confuse keeping with remembering. The Vietnamese do both, not just keeping the bones of the battlefield, but turning pain into a pride large enough to pass through generations. This is not just a relic. This is a spiritual fortress. A message sent straight to Western scientists. We don't just know how to win. We know how not to forget. But why, on this very stretch of river, are 3 heroes worshipped together, separated by nearly 300 years of history? What made Bach Dang not just a river, but a repeating formula for victory? In the next episode, we step into the place where the terrain begins to speak. There are battlefields that don't need to be built. They already exist, just waiting for someone wise enough to use them. Episode 7. Sarah Chen stands before the Trang Ken topographic map, not looking at monuments, not looking at temples. She looks at the curves of the limestone mountains. Stone masses rising like teeth clamping the river mouth shut. From a maritime perspective, this is a perfect bottleneck. Every ship from the sea wanting to go deep inland must pass through here. No detours, no second options. People often praise big guns, thick armor, steel fleets, but at Bach Dang, the strongest thing was not a weapon. It was military geopolitics. The Vietnamese did not build fortresses. They used an entire mountain range. They didn't erect walls. They used the river itself. Stone became watchtowers, water became traps, and territory became an ally. This is when intellect rises above muscle. When you understand the land you stand on deeply enough, you don't need to carry much iron and steel. The mountains are silent, but they lock every escape route. The gaps beneath the river are not harmless. They are waiting for the moment. Marcus leans down, pointing to traces of ancient resin left on the artifacts. A question arises. Why is the wood and iron here more durable than elsewhere? Could it be that the very geology of this land contributed to creating a factory where nature and humans fought together? If episode 6 is where history stands up to be worshipped, then episode 7 is where history begins to reveal its cold technical structure. And in the next episode, we will return to what lies beneath the water, where mathematics begins to decide life and death. There are weapons that do not make an explosion, but when they speak, it is already too late. Episode 8. Marcus kneels at the water's edge of Bach Dang. Not before a warship, not before a monument, just stake heads rising and sinking with the rhythm of the tide. These are not the actual stakes of 1288. Those are being absolutely preserved in Quang Yen. This is a reconstruction, but what makes Marcus's blood run cold is not the wood. It is the water. He watches the flow at the Trang Ken Bend, a stretch of river that seems gentle. But when the tide recedes, the water velocity skyrockets. No human strength needed, no muscle required. It is the water itself that turns the silent stakes into arrows. Warships weren't attacked, they charged into them. We learn kinetic energy and potential energy in books, through formulas, through drawings, but 700 years ago, soldiers in cotton tunics used those very laws to crush the most powerful fleet in the world. No need to name them, just need to understand them. Marcus realizes, this was not a battle. This was a math problem. And the solution was the existence of a nation. Every wave crashing against the wooden stakes is not the sound of water. It is the echo of a price paid to keep independence. Water is squeezed through a narrow gap. Screaming, heavy ships slide in despair. No one screams, no one orders, only silence and a predetermined ending. Marcus stands up, sees a group of Gen Z students performing a ceremony by the riverbank. He wonders, what makes a stake field, silent for 7 centuries, still speak to those born in peacetime? The answer lies in the fact that no one in this battle acted alone. When you realize you've been surrounded, every path has already been drawn. Episode 9. Sarah and Marcus stand before the stone stels at the site, not to read about heroic deeds, but to trace the structure. The ancient inscriptions don't tell stories of heroes. They describe the connection. From Van Don, through Quang Yen, to Tran Ken, not one battle, but a closed campaign. If you escape the sea gate, you hit the shoals. If you cross the shoals, you enter the tactical pocket. If you try to retreat, the river closes behind you. No center, no breaking point, only a matrix. The Mongols were used to fighting on the steppes. Fast, strong, striking straight. But here, every step had already been taken by someone else. 700 years ago, Tran Hung Dao did not confront. He controlled space, dynamic defense, striking with the tidal rhythm, breaking formations with terrain. No need for a quick win. Just don't let the opponent escape. The strong one is not the one with more troops, but the one who turns their weakness into the opponent's place of death. Bach Dang achieved that not with human strength, but with patience. The smallness of Dai Viet was stretched through time, until it was large enough to swallow an entire empire. Marcus is stunned by one final detail. This entire relic site was built by the resources of the people. No budget, no orders, only a silent consensus. He understands. This is not just a place to commemorate victory. It is where the Vietnamese voluntarily preserve a collective memory. If episode 8 was the moment the trap closed, then episode 9 is when you realize there is no way out, because from the very beginning, you entered a space not meant for invaders. And in episode 10, we will touch the darkest part of the forest, where there is no more water, no more stone, only the final price of arrogance. Sunset falls over the reconstructed stake field at Bach Dang Jiang. The final light of day stains the water red, as if the river is holding onto a memory it hasn't yet put into words. Episode 10. Professor Marcus stands silent. No more measurements, no more equipment, only a human facing history. He opens his field notebook, once packed with numbers, charts, and hydraulic equations, and slowly writes a single, short line. I came here seeking data, but what I found was a spirit. In that moment, Marcus understands what he had been trying to explain through pure science. The stakes in Quang Yen, precise to the centimeter. The commemorative space in Hai Phong, majestic, silent, ritualistic. These two seemingly opposite worlds are, in fact, one. Bach Dang is not just a battlefield. It is a cultural genetic code, activated every time this nation stands on the brink of survival. The modern world is obsessed with AI, nuclear weapons, and optimized algorithms. But Bach Dang reveals another truth. The most powerful weapon does not lie in metal or silicon, but in the connection between humans, nature, and collective memory. No navigation system can replace the understanding of the tides. No supercomputer can simulate the patience of those waiting for the water to recede for months. Modern science is powerful, but indigenous intelligence, accumulated over generations, can decide the fate of an entire empire. When an international visitor steps here, they don't just access Vietnamese history. They face a larger human question. Is technology enough to defeat violence? Or can only the aspiration for freedom do that? Don't just look at the stone monuments. Look at the eyes of the people quietly lighting incense by the riverbank. There, history is not in books. It is living, breathing, and being transmitted through silent faith. The river flows slowly, but beneath are layers upon layers of time. Every small wave hitting the rocks is like an ancient heartbeat still echoing. This journey is not over. The wooden stakes are only part of the solution. In video 3, Marcus and Sarah will dive deeper into fire tactics, the fourth weapon that turned Bach Dang into a literal inferno. How could primitive fire rafts, combined with wind and tide, incinerate a fleet that once terrified the world? See you when the water recedes, and the fire begins to burn.